Yeah.
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 You hesitated. Is there?
It's because we went live.
Okay. Okay.
Two of us in a dog. Yeah.
Thought maybe there was a secret. I'm like, oh, okay.
No.
Oh, hi everybody! Look at there's how did all these people get here already? We just went live. Hi Becca. Hi Joe. Hi Eugene. What else is in there? I mean, hi Katie. It's good for you to join us. Oh,
Right back at you,
filling
Jason.
it live. Welcome everyone, and welcome back to me. You guys all know that I was missing last week. I had a little bit of a nervous breakdown and needed a night off to recuperate. But now I'm back with some of my favorite people here. And now that I'm back, I'm going to turn this over to Katie, who's going to do the work here real quick.
All right. Well, we've got a new sponsor. We talked about that last week. So first sponsor of the night is
bourbon.
Not that. Our first sponsor is Go Indie Now. They are the online indie artist network, and they offer exciting new content weekly, monthly, and seasonally, all of which highlight, support, and promote indie artists of all forms. You can check them out at goindienow.com, subscribe to their YouTube channel, or find them on Facebook. And remember, it's always time to go indie now. And I know the boss is watching, so I just had to make sure I nailed that line.
Yes.
Did you just make that up because it sounded so smooth?
I'll hear about it later if we get it wrong.
Right. Yes, we will.
No, Joe, we love you, and thank you so much for supporting our show. Their support offers us the ability to stream on StreamYard, which does Facebook and YouTube at the same time, and provides this lovely live comment section we have on the side, which will be popping up on the screen as we go.
So, before we get started here, we were talking about V's tiny house. So we're 20 on the bottom and then 26 on the top, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like the sound of that. I actually want to get a camper, like one of the driving campers for me and my wife.
Mm-hmm.
When the kids are all gone, and we can just drive around and just like park it in, at friends' driveways and stuff, like at Katie's house. I love that idea, but the tiny houses are just amazing. Is it anything like the tiny house on the show?
I mean, I'd like to think so. I'd like to think it's cuter. No, we
all right.
We've been working on it since
Suck it, tiny houses.
2014. So it's taken a hot minute to do. There are a lot of work, but and a fair amount of money. But hey, it's up front, Yeah. I'm really excited to get it on the road soon. So.
That's cool.
I gotta wonder though, like living in a tiny house, especially during quarantine, do the walls really start feeling like they're closing in on you? Like,
so my husband and I both work as archaeologists, so we basically live out of hotels more often than not. And the apartment that we live in when we're not working is a studio apartment. And so technically we'll actually have more room in the tiny house, and we've gotten very used to being very close because we work together, we live together, we also we're dig partners when we're digging together, so it's a lot of togetherness, and we're both very good at being alone together. And that, I mean, not just during COVID.
So you'd have to be, because you drive each other nuts if you were right on top of each other and not able to feel at least some separation when you need it.
Yeah, headphones are wonderful things.
Yeah, we have two rooms. We have the main trailer, and then we have a aluminum attic room that's 30 feet long versus our 37 feet long, and then we have a deck out front. So,
and it's just one floor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
That's
so
awesome.
it's what they call it's a travel trailer park model.
Okay, yeah.
But it's not. We wanted the ones with the peaks and the second floor, but you can't have that here. Okay.
Change. And I like talking to you guys, but this is a show about the writing and publishing industry. We're
True. Yes. Not tiny houses. Sorry.
You started it.
Is Jason trying to put us on topic?
No, I'm not. I don't have any topics.
Oh my goodness.
We should introduce ourselves, though. These been on the show a couple times before. Dwayne, I know that you've been on my show, The Raven. I don't think you've been on Screen Info, have you?
No, I don't think so. No, just your show. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, Dwayne, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Dwayne Clayden. I was a police officer and paramedic for 42 years. And about 10 years ago, while I was still working, I got this idea that I wanted to start writing. I needed a hobby that wasn't exactly work. So I started writing crime thrillers. I guess you write what you know. And so I started 10 years ago, took lots of courses, conferences and that sort of thing. And in 2018, published my first book. And then in 2019, I published two. And I have one ready to go now. And the second one, I just got back from my editor from Final Edit. So the work's up to me now. So I love writing crime thrillers.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service as a police officer.
Thank you.
And Crisis Point was very cool. I enjoyed it a lot. And you and I have already talked about Crisis Point, but we're gonna have to talk about it again because
Hey, it doesn't count if you didn't do it on this show.
that's right.
Okay, perfect.
Well, and
Yeah.
I noticed that you're doing the Zoomy thing now, Katie, with the solo layout. Is that a new thing since we're working with Go Indie now, and Joe likes to do that?
No, that's just we haven't done it in a while. We need to
Wait,
do
wait.
that.
Oh, see, I see better there. That's better.
Who gave you the control? Damn it!
They don't give me controls.
We just never
That's what
logged
you
in
said.
for them.
That's like when I started working at the clinic I work at, and by the way, my boss is watching right now, so I got to be careful here. Oh, and like Kendra says, she lived in a one bedroom.
Mastiff. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that counts.
Yes, that
Huge.
truly counts.
I mean, it took up a lot of room. That was a big dog. But anyhow, when I first started working at the clinic, I worked there with a gal who had been there for a couple of years already, and within a few months, I already had a key. And I remember she got really upset with me about it. I was like, "You don't realize that I have a key so that I could come in early and work late and lock the doors. It's not something that you want." But yeah, that was kind of funny. I don't know why that felt relevant right now to talk about. What were we? Oh, the controls. The controls.
Controls.
Right.
Control, right.
That's right. Oh, man.
Control is Dwayne's book.
I have to comment on the 600 square foot with a Mastiff and 3 kids. I mean, 3 kids is one thing, but the Mastiff, that's a huge dog.
Well,
And
the
that's
Mastiff is the
not
jungle gym.
Nice. Oh my goodness. I mean, I've got a husky and we're not allowed to let her get over 65 pounds because of her hip issues. And just having her in our 1,000 square foot apartment has been crazy. And she went from a dog that hated doing walks and hated, being forced to go outside to now demanding walks every day or she goes crazy.
Yes.
Just having, a 65-pound dog in the house is crazy, but less space and a bigger dog. Oh my God.
Yeah, our dog's almost 80 pounds, so
Ah,
it's a little snug.
Well, and those big dogs are so much fun, though. I mean, I don't have a big dog. I have all miniature dogs, which Katie knows. She's been here. All
they're
pugs
so
and
cute.
chihuahuas. They're cute, but whenever we get, a good 180-pound, Borbor Mastiff at the shop, I'm like, God, I love these big freaking things, and I'm like, but I don't want to go home because it's as big as one of my rooms, and books are bigger than my dogs combined, and so much
By
work.
a lot. You fit like probably 20 of your dogs in a Mastiff.
Oh, all right. So our other guest tonight is the incredible V.S. Holmes, archaeologist, and V has been on the show before. But can you introduce yourself and tell us about yourself?
Sure thing. So I'm V.S. Holmes. I'm a sci-fi fantasy writer. I'm also an archaeologist when we're working, when there's work to be had. That's me basically. I'm a nerd. Too close up, Jay.
Touche.
I didn't have my mic on or anything, and they're like,
That fits.
We haven't had you around for a while. We got to mess with you.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, he wasn't
All right,
on
and
last
then
week, but he was the week before, right? I don't know. Just time is just gone.
Yeah, time's
I'm glad I'm not the only one feeling that. It's like every week flashes by, but yet feels like it's forever at the same time.
And you're like, what day is it?
Yeah, every day. What day is it?
Yeah.
You know, it is unhappy when you wake up on a Tuesday and think it's Saturday, and then you realize you have to get up and actually go to the computer and do your day job.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not Saturday, I can't sleep in.
Yeah. And you know, I have one of those jobs that's really enjoyable most days because I work with animals and I absolutely love animals. So we're already winning right there. But I'll tell you what, these last few mornings lately, it's like I really don't want to get out of my bed and go anywhere, you know. I just want to let the world pass by for another 6 months and see what happens next year. You know, it's just like, let's hit the reset. Let's hard reset on this, like I had to do with my computer not long ago, and just move on. But anyhow, I was going to talk about something. Katie, do you know what it was?
No, I can't read your mind.
You know what? I do know what I was going to talk about. So, all right. So V has got this really amazing dark colored lipstick going today that I'm super jealous of. And then Katie was talking about this book that she's reading. It looks like a Deborah Harkness book. And so I was thinking, well, why don't we talk about witches a little bit? Maybe some favorite witch books or, you know, witch related lore, anything like that.
Or the secret project that I'm working on.
Ooh, we like
secret projects. Dwayne, do you have any witchy stuff you want to talk about?
Oh, I'm gonna have to think about that.
All right, you think about that, and we're gonna come back to you because
you have some spooky tales. That's for sure.
Yeah. Witches are great. I mean, I love everything from witch fiction to the actual witch history, even though the actual witch history is not entertaining at all. It's absolutely effing horrible and tragic. But so I'd like to let's talk about witches, guys. You guys down?
Yeah.
Sure.
We can do that.
It's just
I have a series with a witch in it. So a Wiccan, you know, who does spells and initially does them badly.
Do you write books as well, Jane? We never talk. I wouldn't know. We don't write any books out.
Yes.
We missed you, Jason. We missed you.
It's funny. It's very funny. I friended somebody in the campground recently, and she says, "Oh, congratulations on getting published." And then I saw her today. I'm like, "You know, I'm up to 50, right? I have 50 published books." And she goes, "Oh, I didn't know." Apparently, I'm not selling myself here very well.
You know, you forget to do that, I swear. Not to derail us off of Jason's topic, but self-promotion in person feels so foreign. I don't know if you guys get the same thing where when somebody asks you about your book, you could probably talk about it forever, but when they put you on the spot, you're like, I do write books. Yeah. Those things, pages, I do that.
Yeah, but yeah. So yes, Jason, I write books and I have witches and spells in them too, which is fun. It was interesting to research the Wiccan background and the Wiccan religion. So
I am showing a lot of chest here, guys.
Yes, oh my.
Here, I how close to the research did you stick when you're actually writing?
To the Wiccan religion, I stuck to it because it interested me, you know, the nature-bound religion. What, Jason? What did you say?
I didn't know anything.
But yes, I mean, I stuck to that. I found some, you know, viable spells and, you know, of course, changed them a little bit, but you know, the ingredients are all earthbound ingredients. It's not like, you know, I have newt. So, it's all crystals and herbs and oils. So
research is half the fun.
Yeah. It was.
I like how you refer to those as ingredients too, earthbound ingredients. That's really cool. That's a
Thank
neat
you.
way to look at it.
Yeah. Well, if you're building a potion or a spell, it's just like cooking. I'm a bad cook, so
Yeah, I must have been thinking about I must have misunderstood you because I was thinking of it kind of the ingredients that went into the stories themselves, how you're using these
Oh,
elements and calling them ingredients. So that's what
well,
I was thinking, which I thought was really cool. But
I was
actual
putting in the
ingredients
spell.
oh,
Sorry.
that, I
two
guess
things
actual
can be true.
ingredients are cool. That's what stuff can be two things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
that's cool because I don't have to I don't do a whole lot of research for a lot of my books because most of them aren't set in this world. I have to do mechanical research and stuff like that, but it's always neat when there's someone who is like really researching either like a culture or religion or myths or whatever, and I'm always curious how truthful they are because we always warp things a little bit. So
A little bit, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I took what I learned and changed it so it wasn't, plagiarism.
Right.
Because I'm like, okay, so this is the things, these are kind of the words, so here's what I'm going to change it to. But I remained true to the form, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
So
Spirit.
I mean, I researched crime stuff too for my FBI series.
Yeah, I guess the closest I would come to that is I do a talk on poison as a murder weapon, and looking at poison back through
Nice.
time, and especially in the 1700s into the 1800s, the poisons, there was no such thing obviously as forensics, so some of the poisons were referred to as inheritance tax, because you could get rid of your senior family members and collect your inheritance, and there was no way for people to really know. They couldn't tell what drug had been given or what poison had been given. And there's actually a book called The Poisoner's Handbook that goes through the history. So yeah, it's one of my favorite books. Can I say that? It actually is truly a fascinating book. Some of the history, and it was almost like a cat and mouse game of the poisoners would develop a poison, and then science was trying to find a way to detect it and counteract it, and then another poison would come, and on we go into the current day.
So what's your favorite poison?
Oh well, yeah. My favorite poison, or the one that would be least likely to be detected even now, is a neuromuscular blocker, which is usually used improperly on TV. So the neuromuscular blocker knocks out everything except your heart. So the heart is a different muscle. It's not. So heart keeps pumping, but you can't blink, you can't talk, you can't breathe because you can't move your diaphragm, and it's a very painful way to go. And it'll follow, you can survive 4 minutes without air. That's about the time you would have. And it's also one of the drugs that's used in, of the 3 drugs used in a lethal injection.
Okay.
Oh.
So they add a couple of sedatives in it, so the terror isn't there of not being able to breathe. But
Right.
Yeah.
Just
so
the other terror.
yeah, so it wears off very quick and is hard to find in the blood afterwards.
I just want to point out that when you said I give a talk on poisoning, every person hears that. Ooh,
Oh,
what the hell is wrong with us?
I know. So quick.
We're authors.
Yeah. So quick story on that. The very first talk I ever did at a writing conference was on that poison is a murder weapon. I'd never been to this conference before. It was 2012 when Words Collide in Calgary. And a friend had said, hey, you should come and talk about it. I was just getting into the crime writing stuff then. So I showed up half an hour before my talk and was introduced to people. And they said, okay, well, you're in this room. And I walked into the room, and there was a lot of people in the room. And I thought, okay, well, they haven't cleared out yet. And then more people came in, and more people came in, and more people came in. And by the time I started my talk, I like to pace when I talk. I had to stand still because I had people sitting at my feet. The entire room was filled, and it was at that point in time I realized how sick crime writers really are.
There's a lot of murderers in this room.
Right. and they were taking notes like crazy.
Yeah, you do.
One quarter cup, the deadly nightshade. 1/4.
That's
Yep.
right.
Oh yeah.
Now, now, not to sound like I'm fangirling on here, but do you have a recording of that presentation? Because we need that.
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think I do. That is something
That's something for
something
the
I I
right
thought of
there.
last year at the conference, and then I didn't do it. I was talking on some other stuff, but
How
yeah,
about Cliff
I do
Notes?
need to do that. And I actually have a friend who keeps telling me, I think she's posted on the site here, Jennifer, that keeps saying, you have to record this stuff. You have to record this stuff.
Yes.
Now,
I mean,
who is Jennifer? Is that online for authors?
That's online for authors, yeah.
Well, hi, Jennifer. I don't think I've met you before, but it's good to meet you. And you know what? On the subject of poison, guys, there is a podcast that I am fairly obsessed with called "This Podcast Will Kill You." It's all about infectious diseases, and they do several episodes about several poisons, and it is just freaking fascinating. It is
Good.
so good. But
I-
if you're interested, it's a great show to check out.
and that's the one you listen to at work.
I do listen to it at work.
Yeah.
Although we've got all sorts of good stuff at work too, so you wouldn't want to come in there and mess with anybody. We know
Oh,
we
yeah.
know all the right.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I dated a vet tech once, and yes, can corroborate that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what's funny is because we're usually we're fairly happy people when we're working because we love what we do. But man, when we see
Animals.
some nasty stuff, we see some. Most people are like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna go throw up and then go home after that. But yeah, we've had several students in this last year who have one actually just was at the tail end of her schooling to be a vet tech, came in, observed us for a day, and quit vet tech school.
My.
We had another one who passed out in the middle of a procedure, and I mean, man, I mean, I think that either you're built for it or not, and I think
Yeah.
that, in
Yeah.
some ways, like, Dwayne, I know that you were in, law enforcement and EMT for years, and I think that some of the stuff you see, either you're built for it or you're not, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We
Mhm.
had the same thing with the students when they would come out. They'd spend 4 to 6 months in classes, and then they would come out and not having been exposed to it before. It was a shock to the system when we went to some of the more serious calls.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And
Firemen have that too. So
oh, I
firemen.
bet. Well, because firemen, aren't they usually the first people called, or is that just something I see in TV shows?
Well, it depends on how close they are to the scene. But yeah, first called to accidents, obviously first called to fires. So, I mean, Darren did that. My husband did that. He was a volunteer firefighter when we got married. So,
Okay.
Yeah, we live in a really rural area, and firefighters are always the first ones because they're the closest because of
Yeah.
just the way our infrastructure is. So.
Okay. Well, you guys were talking about research, Jaden and B. Dwayne, yeah, I know that you and I have already talked about this once before, but because you were in service for so long, did you have a lot of research that you needed to do into your crime thrillers, or was it all stuff that it was kind of already in your background?
I think a lot of it, especially in Crisis Point, was a lot of background. So there was a number of scenes in Crisis Point that were things that I had experienced, and so I put those in. There was one that was a 20-minute car chase. I was by myself. That was pretty exciting, and so I threw a few of those things in. But I find a little bit on the research side that I feel under pressure to get it right. Because I know other police officers or paramedics, I'm hoping they're going to read it. And if I make a mistake on any of those, they'll be all over me for it. So I do double check things on guns and how many shots they can fire and the speed and make sure some of it, because my stories, the Brad Coulter series starts in 1976. So I also have to make sure that the guns were actually around then. And I actually caught myself a few weeks ago that I had my main character with a Glock, and that pistol wasn't created until 10 years after the point in time I was in the novel. And it was just one of those things that I had just finished writing a story that was in current times, and they were carrying Glocks. And when I started writing this other one, I just automatically threw the Glock in, and then caught myself and went back and said, wait a minute, I don't remember that. And went back and looked and said, oh yeah, I was 10 years out on that. If I'd put that in, I know lots of guys that would have just rolled their eyes.
Yeah.
And been after me on that one.
But when I wrote Delia, which is called Whispers in the Shadows now, there was a lot of stuff that happened during World War II, and I've always been a little bit of a World War II junkie, and so I understood the weaponry that was used. But as soon as it came to weaponry in the modern age, I was making all sorts of mistakes, and so I actually called a friend of mine who's just kind of the buddy who really loves guns. You know, he's got a huge arsenal in his basement, and I was like, I really need some help. You should go over something for me, and help me to get stuff right, because that's one of those things that people will always call you out on, and it will stick in their minds. And the funny thing is, in that same book, I didn't realize it until I listened to the audiobook through a second time, unfortunately, after it had been published. But in the first chapter, there's a scene where someone's getting chased by a guy with a shotgun, and there's at one point where he cocks the gun, but then he just cocks it again like 2 paragraphs later. Oh no! It's there now, so with it, I guess.
I like watching the Forgotten Weapons YouTube channel, especially with the older ones, because as my fantasy series progresses, it's getting closer to Flintlock fantasy, and I know like a little bit, but I really don't know that much, and so I've been really enjoying looking at that because he goes in such depth, and there's a lot of like lesser known things that I like being able to incorporate into just the plot or the world building.
Yeah, I had my gun friend take me shooting because if I was going to write an FBI thriller, I needed to know how to shoot a gun and understand just how difficult a sharpshooter or an expert shot is. Because I certainly wasn't.
Part of that research is getting to experience it. So going out and trying out different guns, trying out a suppressor, seeing what they feel like in your hand, what it sounds like when it goes off, what the kick is, because then you can describe it better for your readers.
Yeah,
I think that too. That and that goes for everything. Is that it's much different when you actually experience it versus when you research it for your book. So that's just. Going to say, all you people out there that wanting to write crime, go out there, kill some people,
Wait. Hold on.
No, we don't want that.
You're not endorsing the killing of people.
No, we are not.
So Joe from Go Indie Now says, I would guess a lot of Nell or VS. They didn't have to research much of either. And, I actually read, I read my first VS Holmes book only a few months ago, and that is actually going to be my next read after this nerdy science book I'm reading right now, because it was so fascinating and the character was so interesting to me. But I got that same feeling that, okay, is this the real VS Holmes? Is this tell us about research and writing a book about archaeology and fantasy and sci-fi.
It wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. I mean, I guess that's like all books, right? But on that level, it really wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be, because Nell does academic archaeology. She's associated with a university, and I do contract archaeology, which is the like blue collar pipeliner version. And so I sort of had some of the same issues actually that Dwayne mentioned. Yeah, no advocating drug killing.
I was just looking at the comments on the side there.
Yeah, that's good. But no, I had some of the same issues as Dwayne, where it's like I know coworkers are going to read this, and methodology varies a lot. And so I was worried that people were going to be like, well, that's not how we do it, and that's not how they do it. It's like, well, but that's how some people do it. So I tried to like strike a medium with it. But as far as her personality goes, no, not much research was needed. No.
And in reading that book, and I told you this already, and it wasn't meant as a dig in any way. Dig, archaeology dig. Yes. I had a tough time understanding some of it because I don't remember what they call when you clear out a space, a unit or something like that. And some of these terms, like I'm trying so hard to picture what this is, but I'm pretty sure I'm picturing it wrong. And so I was kind of going back and forth to the map drawing at the beginning of the book. Sorry, guys, don't commit crime. Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I'm just saying you would really have a good grip on what it feels like.
It was a hypothetical.
So, what do we do when we've got a subject that may or may not be more esoteric in nature, and we're trying to write about it in a way that people can enjoy, but where we're not just spelling every little thing out to dumb it down for people, because that's obnoxious too if you have someone that's knowledgeable. What's a good balance there?
Yeah, that was really hard. I think I was lucky enough to have someone who had gone to one field school, so she knew like the very, very basics, and I had her read it, and she also reads like more fast paced, either thrillers or crime, and so I asked her to read it and say like, okay, so where is it boring? Where were you confused? And that I think was really helpful. And I definitely think that some people who really aren't familiar with anything about it might struggle a little bit, but I think for the most part I nailed it. I hope. I don't know. I also haven't asked my coworkers what they thought because I don't want to know.
That's what I'm scared of, because most of the girls I work with have read my book. Some of them have said that they never wanted to come to work again after reading it. Things like that, which I thought was high freaking praise, right? But
You laugh
don't.
evilly and walk away.
Well, I don't have author thick skin. So one thing I don't do is I don't ask those kind of questions in person to people. I will maybe say, hey, what do you think of it? But I won't go deeper than that, because I am still so self-conscious about my own work, and I know that my psyche isn't as strong as it should be. I've got a lot of it tumbling around up there, and so I don't ask that because I don't want somebody to be brutally honest and point out all the shit that I did wrong, and then me collapse into a little puddle on the ground.
I think
and speak.
I thrive on that. So.
You got to adopt personality where you just smile and
Jane's not human though.
What?
I said you're not human.
Apparently I am, and I burn.
Wait, are you a vampire? Hold on a second.
No.
Can't be. She was over the daylight.
Well, before we engaged in this lovely topic of conversation, though, we were enjoying another topic. Though we were talking about witches, and I think it's important for us to get back to witches, because we didn't hear from Katie at all. Katie, what do you think about witches?
I don't actually write too much about witches, but kind of like VS, I don't always write in this version of our world. So I get to do a lot of making up the magical system and how it works, and recreating the gods and how those things, evolved into what this world knows as magic. So I have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, magic systems are really interesting.
You got to remember to stick to them though too.
Yeah.
I screwed myself over with, my brilliant idea to create this magic system and my main character and what she can and can't do. And then by the third book, I tried to do something and went, I can't do that. And I kept running into walls because, damn it, I created a magic system and there's rules.
Yep. You gotta follow your own souls, which is like, ah.
You just gotta pull a Doctor Who. Be like, the universe cannot always be explained.
So would
just
you like a
happens.
Mandela effect? And this didn't actually happen the way you thought. This is the way it's always been.
You were
There was
just
a crack.
confused.
That's right. There was a crack in the wall, and some universe energy got through. Bada bing. I've never really, I don't know, I've never written witches specifically, though. In the Dark of Night, that was such a she said.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if sorry, I was trying to read Joe's comment.
that's good. It's all good.
Be very afraid of Jane. That's all you need to know.
Oh, I am. Yeah, she's terrible. I read her. Yeah, never mind. She's
You
terrible.
read Grayson House, right? Or
That
did you
was
read something more?
scarred me. It scarred me because I pictured you doing that to everyone you didn't like.
That's awful. But I scared the hell out of somebody in the computer class that wanted
Notice how happy she is.
the door.
She's so happy. She's so
She's
happy.
thrilled that she's scaring people.
Uh,
That's the whole point of horror.
That's true.
well, one thing I liked about witches and my character in The Dark of Night, we would call her a witch because she can do magically type things, but is the idea that in previous centuries, men and women who were perhaps more educated or more worldly than other men and women were sometimes considered witches just for that fact. They didn't necessarily have to have any kind of magical ability. So I like the idea of just these really kind of educated worldly people, and maybe throw in a little bit of supernatural stuff there and create something. And I feel like that gives it a little bit more reality too, because I can really picture this person existing. And when you can picture him existing, I think that gives more credibility to some of the magic that you create, as long as you don't go too far over the top.
Mhm.
Go too far, then your fantasy. But I like to kind of ride that line a little bit there. And I don't call it magical realism anymore because someone scolded me months back saying that magical realism is not at all what I thought it was. And it's like, oh well, that's not something I'm gonna call my weird quasi fantasy anymore.
Wait,
So
wait a second. So
Yeah.
what is magical realism then? If it wasn't what you had defined it as, what are they telling you it is now defined as?
Magical realism has its roots in a lot of Southern, like Black culture and Latino culture, and when we do it, it's fabulism, which is also a really cool word.
it is. I almost named my podcast The Fabulist.
So there's different versions then of magical realism depending on where it comes from. So we're
the
splintering it
roots
off.
of the culture or whatever. Yeah. Mhm.
I had never heard of that, but
Yeah, I
I'm
learned about it.
fabulism from now on because that's awesome.
Yep. So and I was deeply chagrined when I learned that too. Like, wow, I've been saying this for years. I've been calling my work magical realism because it's realistic with a little bit of magic to it, and it made sense in a practical sense. But I was like, oh well, that sounds like it's something that's going to be offensive to someone else. So I definitely don't want to be offensive. But so yeah, so whoever that person was on Twitter that scolded me years ago, thank you.
but now we can use fabulism, which is, I mean, 10 times better. So
Very cool. Very cool. And you can call me the Fabulist. Wait, is there a way for me to change my screen name right now? Not
I'm taking it. That's awesome. Okay, so then because we always have so many different splinter versions of genres, speculative fiction also gets lumped into that too. So what defines speculative fiction?
Yeah, I think the way I've understood it is it's either an umbrella or it's sort of a holier than thou way of referring to sci-fi. I think it depends on who's saying it.
I only heard it 3 years ago, and when I heard it, I was like, "Wow, that's kind of a hoity-toity thing to say about what we're writing." But whatever. I mean, well, I'll take it.
I've noticed it's usually like well, this is more high concept, or
Oh, I hate that term, high concept. It's all high concept, damn it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it might just be also like a big five publisher kind of name.
And
I don't know.
when I think of speculative fiction, and many people will disagree because spec fiction covers so much, but I think of Samuel Peralta. Several people here probably know who Samuel Peralta is. I think of his fiction and his poetry, and it really kind of defines for me what spec fic is. Just really unique ideas, things that may be futuristic, tech-wise or thought-wise, or a little bit of fantasy. But it's really tough for me to describe the way I see it without just reading his writing, because I'm like, that's just what it is to me. That's what it means.
Yeah, I think there is an undertone to like society, like the aspect of speculating about society too, not just technology. If we were to like really break it down, maybe.
And really, it just reminded me of my nickname. Oh, dang it, where is it? I can't remember what it means. Julie, you gotta. It's like a hierarchy of horror. You gotta remind me of what it is, Julia, because I love the way that looks. It makes me seem like some kind of ancient Egyptian goddess.
We're gonna have to make you a nice little scripty font with that.
Ooh, papyrus?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, not papyrus. No.
You mean the Avatar movie font? I'm confused.
Oh my god. I'm not gonna lie, I love that frickin' movie.
I love that movie so much. It's so like good. It blew people with tails, shiny things everywhere. God. Where can you go wrong? I mean, the plot is not original, but that's okay.
No.
The visuals are gorgeous.
It's a good plot. It is. And what about my friend Michael, who is I actually haven't talked to in years. Michael, if you're out there, you should connect with me again. He referred to them when it first came out as the Sexy Smurf movie or something like that. It's a little weird. I'm not going to look at it the same way again now, but I think you've missed a huge concept issue. But anyhow, okay. What were we talking about, Katie?
We were going to get you a title card with scripty font.
Yes.
That was the last thing I remember. Squirrel moment.
Yeah. Hierophant of horror. Yeah, what's taking you guys so long? Rebekah, Julia, I need a definition here so that I can actually help myself. Yes. Okay, so horror. Here's a good question. What do you guys consider horror? Like, what's horror to any of you? Like, you write crime thrillers, and V, you write. I've only read any of your Know About Me stuff. I haven't read anything else. But you write about an archaeologist that wouldn't typically be considered horror, but there's some horrible stuff. Same for you, Dwayne. There's some horrible stuff in there. Is that horror, or is that still?
Where's the line between horror and thriller? Where's the line on that?
I mean, if you're talking about like story structure wise, I think horror is usually determined as something much more powerful and outside the main character's power. As far as the antagonist goes, like it's either supernatural or not, but it might feel that way if it's a human villain. But I feel like there's something more there than just story structure. That I don't know. There's something visual.
Yeah, I would think so too. I mean, I think I've created some terribly, terribly evil characters who do horrible things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're evil characters who do horrible things. I'm not sure that it necessarily crosses over into horror. You might be horrified by it, but
right.
That's different in itself.
Well, and Anita says horror equals fear. Now, here's my question for you, Anita, or anyone else who wants to chime in. Is it fear for the characters or fear for the reader? I have a story in the collection I just released, and I don't consider it necessarily a horror story, but it's in a collection of horror stories, and it's terrifying for the character. I don't think it's necessarily terrifying for the reader. Is that still a horror story? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
See, I don't know where the line actually is drawn there. I've always kind of, again, like with other ones, you kind of lump them in together, use them interchangeably. But I know there is a line, so hopefully somebody in our audience can help us.
Yeah,
I mean, line.
I write suspense, and some of them walk the line into horror because there are scary elements, and don't go into the woods, things like that.
Monsters are scary, but not all monsters are in horror books too.
Right. Well, there's psychological horror, just like psychological suspense. There's, the monster side. There's, just the horrific things that people do to each other. So it walks a line, and can be either.
Well, so then that line gets really wide and really blurry, because I went to see a movie in theaters maybe 2 years ago now, and I mean, I felt a lot of fear. It was horrible for me. It was terrible for me, and everybody else in my family loved it. It's called, you might be familiar with it, it's called The Greatest Showman.
I was waiting for that. Yeah,
it was horrific. It was horrible. I thought it was. I mean, I had a little bit of PTSD after watching that, but everyone else seems to think it's this great movie, and the characters were happy, and so can we classify that as horror?
Is that why you were hugging so hard when I made you watch it when you came down to our house? I mean, I just thought you wanted to cuddle, but I didn't know you were scared. I'm sorry.
Put up Rebekah's last comment, because that is really good.
Most humans, yes. There's the
don't count.
Jane is not human.
Of course, you have to understand, when my husband played pool on Wednesday nights, I would watch horror movies alone at home, because he's not a horror person, and I and I'd be fine. I'd go to sleep. So yeah, maybe I'm not. I don't count.
I'm the opposite. I have that overactive imagination, and I will hear every sound in the house that I shouldn't hear after watching a horror movie, and will freak out and not be able to sleep at all.
The Ring didn't scare me.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah. The Ring didn't really scare me.
Panic Room got to me, but that's more of a suspense, not so much a horror. And it's funny because I watched it and I got up to go upstairs and all the lights in the house went off.
Oh, hell no. No.
And my kids are up there, and I'm like, I just watched Panic Room. So I kind of went up there and made sure they were okay.
High budget suspense done by a director and cinematographers who really know their shit is more terrifying than anything else.
Right.
Because they know exactly what they're trying to create. They're creating these prolonged, suspenseful moments with a little bit of release and then right back into it. So you never really recover. I really liked what was the John Krasinski movie, A Quiet Place?
Yeah, I liked
movie.
That was good.
It was phenomenal. The storytelling was great. The acting was all wonderful, and it was just that slow, steady build, a little bit of release, slow, steady build, and I was like, oh, that's just beautiful. So much better than most horror movies where, okay, we're on a farm and someone's trying to dice us up with a machete or chainsaw or whatever. And there's somebody else that does it really well. He's been on the show, Michael Brent Collins, one of the best-selling horror authors in the world, and he is all about creating suspense, and some of his books that might not even be considered horror are definitely horror because of the way that he makes you feel, how your skin is crawling, your chest is tight, you can't sit still, you can't sleep well, and Joe says, I think good. Oh wait, I got to do a Joe voice. What's a good Joe voice? I think good horror is based on your fears, but the scariest things to most people are those that hit closest to home and possibly make you think this could happen. Joe, that's a very good Joe
That makes
voice.
sense. That makes a lot of sense. One of the reasons that I love like monster movies, but I can't watch horror, is in my mind, I know it's 100% fake, and it never bothered me to watch Frankenstein. It never bothered me to watch vampire movies or werewolf movies. Those were just fun. But you put in a serial killer stalking you in the dark, and I'm too scared. I can't sleep. I hear noises. I think people are outside the window, and the imagination just goes wild.
Yeah, things like Gothica and What Lies Beneath, those movies got to me more than things like The Ring or, things like that, because it does make you think.
Yeah.
Even though they both had supernatural elements.
But those elements, those monsters are still in the horror category in some respects, even though they're really not, what traditional, I guess, horror is.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's all about subtlety. If you're subtle enough, if you don't go over the top, then you maintain that believability. And some people want over the top, and that's cool. I mean, I read fantasy for years and years and years. I still really love fantasy. But if you maintain that realism, you can really drive things home and really hurt people when they read your book. Watch your movies,
and smile when they do that to you.
Right. And so I think that, books like crime thrillers, and Dwayne writes crime thrillers. I think that those do hit close to home because we know that these types of things happen in the real world. We hear about it on the news or we watch it in our movies, and so when we read a book about horrific things happening like this, we can really believe it. That okay, this stuff really did happen up in Canada. Thank God, we've got a border, and it would never come down to peaceful United States.
Yes, we're doing so well down here. I think another part that sort of separates thriller and horror, and again, it's like a blurry line here, but I think when you're going into a horror story, you don't know if it's going to end up okay. I mean, obviously, with any book, you're not sure, but I think there's a much greater uncertainty with horror than there is with thriller. Because with thriller, I think you have a lot more of the pieces, and you can sort of piece together like, well, maybe if they do this, if they do that, it'll end up okay. But with horror, there's a lot less control that you have, whether it's the character or just you as the reader. I think you have a lot less control, and you're really not sure. And often, I think in a lot of horror, it doesn't end up okay.
Yeah, survival is your happily ever after, and that's it.
Right, and that's only you, and then everyone else, especially that one person you slept with at the beginning, is gone.
I think that's a big part of the reason that certain people get stuck with the authors that they're used to reading. And I'm guilty of this as well. Until very recently, I would stick with certain authors that I love because you kind of get a feel for their style, what they're going to allow to happen, how they're going to resolve things. Is it going to be, are you okay with those types of resolutions? And so you're like, I want to read more books like that. I want to read books with an unhappy ending, or I want to read books where the hero gets their way. And so you get kind of stuck in that, and you forget that there's so many more cool options out there. There's not always good guy wins or good guy doesn't win. Sometimes there's some other really cool stuff that you don't even know is out there until you try. And when authors start, especially what I especially love lately is when authors are blurring the line between what is the good guy and what is the bad guy. I really some people are just pretty eliminated. Sorry everyone. Comments in the podcast.
Agreed.
You have no idea what I'm doing. But anyway, I really enjoy it when that line between good guy and bad guy is blurred because I feel like it is a lot more realistic. And it's a little bit more dynamic. I've read 1,000 books where the good guy wins, and I like those books. I like the good guy getting their way, but I also like it when they're a little bit ambiguous. Maybe the good guy is a total piece of shit who just happens to the right thing at the right time for the right person, and that's what makes him the good bad guy in that story. When in reality, maybe the bad guy was actually doing the right thing 90% of the time, and we only got to hear the good guy's point of view for this, 300 pages. I don't know. There's so many cool options out there.
Perspective matters.
I love morally gray characters. Like,
Oh yeah.
I don't think I could write a character that wasn't at least a little bit bad.
Well, I think that Nell is, at least as far as book one goes, I think Nell is not a morally gray character. I think that Nell is a good
That's true.
person.
She's
I mean,
flawed though. She's flawed. I mean,
oh
I think
yeah, she's fucked, but
especially
she got some problems.
with the anger. But what one of the other things that I was, concerned about with research is, she is a white woman studying a culture that's not hers, and that's I think where some of that weird morality comes in, because it's like, what's going on here?
I have a question that relates to this, if that's all right. Okay. It doesn't matter if it's all right. I'm going to ask it, and whether you answer it or not, it's okay. Thanks, Jason, for the plug of Amongst the Killing. You described it perfectly. Smiley face. You're welcome, Joe. My intent, 100% when I made that statement. My question is this, and you don't have to answer if this is a weird subject. So, Nell, or any other archaeologist, has been hired by some company to dig on some land, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This land is actually the ancestral land of X people. Is it morally or ethically okay for her to be digging on that land? And if she does, do those artifacts go back to the people whose land it was originally, or do they go to whatever company hired her?
Well, who hired that company, and why are they there?
That's what I don't know.
Yeah, it really depends. I have worked for companies that are doing pretty large projects, and we have tribal people out with us. And a lot of times where we're at, culturally and just as far as colonialism goes, it's usually whatever this progress is, it's a new road, pipeline, power line, whatever, it's going to happen anyways. And they know that we're sort of a necessary pothole in the road to protecting what is going to be destroyed anyways. That's like the sanitized version. But I know of people who have walked away from jobs because they were told, no, that's not what you're saying it is. No, that's not human remains, because we don't want it to be. Go away, be quiet. And so then they walked away from those jobs. And that's not okay. But it really depends on who hired them and whether the tribes are involved, because I've also worked on projects where the tribes should have been and weren't, for whatever series of reasons. So yeah, it really depends, but really the tribe should be involved as much as possible.
Okay. Sounds like maybe a complicated issue.
It's a very complicated issue, yes. Okay. And I mean, and that's also, that's coming from my perspective, having worked as a white person in this field. So, I'm sure there are other people who have much more to say about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I've been curious about that, and my wife and I have talked about it, and I keep saying I'm going to ask V, and so now I finally got the opportunity to ask you. So thank you.
I can give you more details when we are off air.
I love it. So we are winding down, everyone, and before we go, I'd like to give each of you, Wayne and V, the opportunity to kind of plug whatever you're working on right now, if that's okay. Dwayne,
Perfect.
You're up.
Yeah, sure. The Brad Coulter series, I have number 4, which is tentatively called 13 Days of Terror, just back from my editor. So it's up to me to make the final changes on it. And it's about a sniper. And the idea actually came from the Beltway sniper, DC sniper in 2002. So that was the kernel of information I needed. And then, I changed it to Canada because we're far more evil than that. And so the snipers go crazy in Calgary, and they have a reason for doing it. But you have to understand that, if you're murdered in Canada, we will apologize and say we're sorry afterwards. Yeah, so that one's going to come out in November. And I'm pretty excited about that one. That one's pretty fast paced and moves quick. And actually, a few times my editor said you're going to have to give the reader a breather in here. You're going to have to do some sort of recap because it's just moving along so
fast.
quick. So yeah. So and that's my goal with the novels is to take you along fast and take you along on the journey and hopefully get your emotion going with it too. And then I'm already started on Coulter series number 6 or number 5, and it's tentatively called Goddess of Justice.
Ooh, I like that title.
Nice.
It's a good one.
Thank you.
All right, V, you're up.
Okay, I'm up. So what am I working on right now? I'm finishing the final book in my Reforged fantasy series, which is terrifying and exciting at the same time. And I'm also working on the 4th Nell Bentley book, which has a lot more murder and explosions and conspiracies in it than the first few. Yes, more Nell. There's a total of 6. And I'm also working on my secret plot line, which is
Tell us about it.
Death and sex and necromancy, and is totally different from anything I've done before. So I'm also looking forward to that.
Yes, I love it.
Yes.
That should be your tagline right there.
Maybe.
Yes.
Right now it's a Valentine for death is the tagline.
Okay.
We'll see how gritty it gets.
Nice. Well, and I said that I hadn't read any of your other books besides Nell Bentley, but that's not true. I also read Smoke and Rain, I believe.
Yes, you did.
A year or two ago. Yeah, that was very good too. So, sorry, again, you started talking about Reforged, so I was like, wait a second. That.
Oh yeah, that thing.
Well, Katie and Wayne, what do you guys have coming out or recently come out with?
Well, I'm still working on Grimm's Daughter, so I'm about 20,000 words into that, and Katie and I are talking about after that maybe doing another co-writing series. So in her worlds,
Possibly tied to the asset series if we can figure out the angles.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm working through book 5. I finally broke the 20K mark on book 5 of the asset series. So I think I'm finally figuring out where the plot's going.
Yep.
And I will hope to have that one out this year.
Yeah, mine will come out on October 13th. So I don't have one every three months. I did a 6-month window. So I slowed down a little bit.
A little bit. Oh.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Jason, how about you?
I actually have Pathosis coming out later this month. I believe on the 25th. Yeah, it's from Three Furies Press, so I'm pretty excited about that. It is actually my pandemic novel that I wrote a few years ago that we'll be releasing in the middle of the pandemic. So I'm excited. Yeah,
Awesome.
there's spiders and zombie-like creatures and just good old-fashioned action. Oh, thank you, Joe. Go Andy Now says, great show, guys. One of your bosses.
Yeah, one of our bosses. And the other boss needs to be mentioned as well. Our other wonderful sponsor, the awesome, the amazing, the not to ever be forgotten, Miss Rebekah Jonesy. She calls herself the author of realistic fantasies, both sexy and killer. For links in the show notes below.
Yay.
Is that the whole thing for Rebekah? I was expecting something snarky.
No, we need more from her. Well, I'll work on it. I'll get the cattle prod out and actually turn it on her this time.
Well, Rebekah she's also the author of the Mab's Doll series, where the Fae understand that everyone is unique and all love is valid. And she also sponsors my show, Unafraid. So I'm very, very happy to have her there. Guys, she is amazing. And she's also co-authoring a book with me over this next year, if I can get it.
That should be fab. What was the word we're using now?
Fabulous.
Fabulous.
Yes, or fabulism.
Yeah. I think it's both. It probably depends on which way you're using it.
I love that.
I'm the fabulist. Fabulist. Fabulism. Yes.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah. Don't you have like pies to bake or something like that? All right, guys. It is wonderful to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone who's been watching, listening, and commenting. We really appreciate this time that we get to spend with you, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank
Remember
you.
to like, share, subscribe.